welcome to your weekly World Climate Change News Report. Our headlines this week are: the fight against the coronavirus to inspire the fight against climate change affects advertisement campaign, new coral reef bleaching episode, marine life to get a new lease of life by 2050, the South Asia climate diplomacy, annual Australia's environment report, and the EU setting a tighter climate target for 2030. Our first story: the fight against the coronavirus to inspire the fight against climate change. The efforts made by many governments, public health workers, and the general public against COVID-19 have been commendable and could be emulated in the fight against climate change, which kills about 7 million people every single year. We should collect lessons learned from this pandemic and take it to improve our responses to the climate crisis. The pandemic has shown our potential to break all political, research, and infrastructural barriers towards a cleaner, healthier future. Our next story: climate change affects the advertisement campaign. People might become more aware of harmful effects of fossil fuels through warning labels at public places and on bills or tickets similar to those that we see on cigarette packets. This suggestion was published in the British Medical Journal, which highlighted how the health impacts of fossil fuels can reduce carbon footprints. Health experts recommend this strategy as an affordable and effective method to remind people about fossil fuels' impact on climate change and the environment. Our third story: new coral reef bleaching episode. Climate change causes the Great Barrier Reef to reach a tipping point of bleaching nearly every single year. This observation was made by the head of the U.S. government agency program that monitors the globe's coral reefs. The temperatures over the Great Barrier Reef broke the records this February, possibly indicating the beginning of yet another global-scale bleaching event in the year 2020. Our fourth story: marine life to get a new lease by 2050. The study, published in the journal Nature, shows that climate change, overfishing, alongside other human-induced damages, have been threatening the oceans and their inhabitants for centuries, but that now we have the ability to restore good conditions that will allow the marine ecosystem to flourish yet again. The first step is to mitigate climate change effects, such as rising water temperatures, acidification, and oxygen loss. Our fifth story: the South Asia climate diplomacy. South Asia is at risk because of climate change effects, such as increasing heat waves and floods. Intensive climate action is needed in the area, but because of the lack of know-how amongst the population in the region, this is not a very easy task. The Global Framework for Climate Services managed to bring together many stakeholders from different South Asian countries to tackle the problem of climate change. Next, the annual Australia's environment report. This Australian report showed that heat waves and droughts across Australia in 2019 produced the worst environmental conditions across the country since the year 2000. The index of the environmental conditions in Australia in 2019 was a low 0.8 out of 10. The 2019 year saw bushfires, record heat, low soil moisture, low vegetation growth, and 40 additions to the threatened species list. This year's report scored environmental conditions across 7 indicators and shows the dramatic effects of climate change. And finally, the EU sets tighter 2030 climate targets. The EU stated its plan to set tougher 2030 emissions targets, which is a move that could help maintain the focus on climate change despite the pressure to soften its green ambitions in response to the coronavirus pandemic. The European Commission began a public survey to gather views on its options to lighten the EU's 2030 target to a 50% or 55% cut in greenhouse gas emissions from the 1990 levels to the 40% they are today. This concludes this week's news. Subscribe for weekly climate change news reports.